Today on the Pro Church Tools Show, we'll be talking about one of our favorite new church websites.
North Point Community Church in Atlanta, Georgia just recently launched their new website, and we think it's one of the best we've ever seen.
So in this episode, we'll talk about all of the good of the website, what we think you can apply to your own context, and we'll give you a behind-the-scenes look into what North Point had to say about their new web platform.
Well, hey there, and welcome to the Pro Church Tools Show. This show is all about helping you and your church navigate the biggest communication shift in 500 years. I'm Brady Shearer, joined as always to my right, your left, it's Alex Mills.
Hello, hello.
You can subscribe to this show wherever you get your podcasts or watch the video version on YouTube, youtube.com/ProChurchTools. If you are watching the video version, make sure to hit subscribe, hit like, hit the church bell so you get notifications and you never miss other videos. We publish new videos every Tuesday and Thursday on our YouTube channel. And today, Alex, we are diving deep into church websites, particularly a single church website that was published earlier this month in January of 2020. And this website is from North Point Community Church in Atlanta, Georgia, and the surrounding greater Atlanta regions. And this website stood out to us immediately. And so we're going to break down what we love about this website, what you can apply in your own church website context. And I even got on a call with my friend Dave Adamson, who works at North Point, to kind of get a behind-the-scenes look, pull back the curtain, as it were, into the process of constructing this website, what the goals were for them internally. I think I did all of my outline prior to speaking with Dave, which I thought was cool because it allowed me to not have any painting or coloring of my lenses of the website, look at it as someone who does website design and website construction for a living, and then hear how he thought about it and how his church approached it afterwards. Anything that stood out to you initially?
Well, yes. And a lot of it comes from the design, which leads into functionality, which we're going to talk about a bit about later. And if you're a regular podcast listener to this show, you may want to consider watching the video version because we're going to show a lot of this website and talk through design choices that lead to functionality, which is my favorite part about this site. As soon as I landed on it, I knew where to go, I knew what to do, and when I started doing it, it just felt right. And really great insight we got from Dave to kind of share the behind the scenes of how and why North Point went this direction with their website.
And if you only can listen to this episode, we're going to do our very best to paint word pictures in your mind of what this looks like. A little preface behind the scenes. North Point said that, 3 or 4 years ago was when they started realizing that they needed a new website. And the first insight I get from that is that, look, no matter how big, small, influential, or non-influential on a global scale that your church is, we all have the same problems. Because every single church ever has been like, wow, you know what? We've needed a new website for a while, and North Point was no different. And they wanted to couple the new messaging that went with this website along with the new tech stack and all of the new functionality. And I think that's insightful as well. It's always great when you can couple change together. If you have been going through, let's say, a slogan or messaging rebrand, we've talked about that on previous episodes, and you want to apply all of this new messaging and communication to your website, maybe that's also the best time to revisit the design and the framework and the functionality. Coupling change together is one of the best ways to implement change because we know that it's not easy. Change is always difficult. So if you're going to change one thing, consider changing 100 because people are going to hate the change no matter how big or small it is. So just get it all over with at one time.
And I think it's also important to note that some of us may be thinking, well, North Point is a gigantic church with a bunch of resources. They probably have the means to build a website that is going to last for 10 or 20 years, which in the age of technology that we're living right now is just not the case. Our websites are never set it and forget it projects, which unfortunately a lot of churches are kind of using their websites that way. It's like, okay, we have something we're happy with. There it is. It's done. And it's like, well, they're almost like living things that like need to be updated all the time on a smaller scale, but then every few years, usually on a bigger scale. And so North Point just went through this process, but like you said, it started 3 or 4 years ago.
And Dave said it took about 18 to 24 months beginning to end to go through this massive overhaul. But then he also spoke to what you just said, in that websites in 2020 and beyond should exist as living organisms. Kind of the old school, old way of approaching websites, especially for churches, was this static brochure style website, almost if you took, a bulletin and then put it online and then never changed it. But we think that having a website that's constantly, changing with the season and has the flexibility and versatility to allow for that, which this new web platform does, is the way to go, because people are visiting your website that are in your church, and people are visiting your website that are not yet connected to your church. And so you always need to be reflecting what is current and what's happening right now. Northpoint.org is the place to find this website. Before we jump into the website, one small disclaimer, because I've made this mistake many times in the past, and it is super, super frustrating, while understandable, when people make this mistake about us. North Point is not one word. It is two words.
And it doesn't have an E on the end.
It does not. North space point, both capitalized. Pro Church Tools, 3 words.
Here we go.
All capitalized. Not all one word, lowercase. Not Pro Church, one word, capital P, capital C. Not Pro Church, one word, capital P, lowercase c. Pro Church Tools, 3 separate words. North Point, 2 separate words. Capitalize each word. Good? End of the episode. Right, we still got to talk about the website. Northpoint.org. The first thing that will stand out to you and stood out to us is the simple and yet familiar framework of the site. So when you land on northpoint.org, you are met with a full screen looping video of 13 different clips. And the video at the beginning at northpoint.org will show individuals, at this time of the recording, though this may change, individuals walking into the church. You'll see kids ministry, you'll see student ministry, you'll see what it looks like inside the auditorium when Andy Stanley is preaching, you'll see the parking lot and what it's like to enter the parking lot. And then you'll be met with a headline as well, a primary call to action, a secondary call to action, and a navigation menu of about 4 items, which is important because we always suggest 7 items or fewer. And then, of course, the logo as well in the top left corner. We're going to talk about the messaging a little later. Let's start by talking about the functional framework and how everything is set up. Here are a couple things that you need to know about websites in general. It only takes about 50 milliseconds for an individual to form a first impression about your website. That comes from a study done by the University of Carleton in Ottawa. It takes another 2.6 seconds for an individual's eyes to concentrate in a way that reinforces their first impression. That's from Missouri University of Science and Technology. What that is saying is that the first impression that you make with your website, an impression that will likely stick for a long time, is made subconsciously within milliseconds and then is finalized or more substantiated, not a word, in 2.5 seconds. And this is happening on a subconscious level. And what's interesting is how it's happening. British researchers found that the quote-unquote look and feel of online health websites was the overwhelming main driver of great first impressions. And in fact, they found that all feedback from researchers, or all feedback the researchers got from participants in the study, found that 94% of the feedback was about design. And the words that these participants were using were things like, it's too complex, or it's too busy, the navigation is poor, there's too much text, it feels too corporate. All of these are feelings. At this point, we're not at all diagnosing or evaluating the content of the website because our first impression is being formed within 1 to 2 seconds. You cannot read text, at least any amount of text beyond 1 or 2 words in that time. And so your first impression is being formed based on the subconscious feelings that you're naturally developing when you land on a website. And Google found in their own independent research that websites with low visual complexity performed the best. To quote Google directly, users strongly prefer website designs that look both simple and familiar. So if you want your website to make a great first impression, what's interesting is that you want to rely on the concrete best practices of established web design. You don't need to, nor should you aim to reinvent the wheel here. And if it's good enough for North Point, it's good enough for you. I know one of the questions I often ask people when they say, I want my website to be original. I was like, do you want your website to be original, or do you want it to accomplish its goals? Because we know what website design needs to be to accomplish these goals. Is it possible that you could be original and accomplish those goals? Perhaps. But we already know what works. So why do we need to reinvent something and hope that that will also work. We have limited resources, limited time, and you probably don't have a full web team like Northpoint does to run testing and to run heat maps and to look at where people are hovering and clicking and then make informed decisions. So just follow best practices. So much of that comes down to low complexity and familiar frameworks.
Yeah, and you can tell that the designers at Northpoint were very conscious of all this stuff when designing this website, because that video that you mentioned that starts playing as soon as you land on the site, regardless of what device you're on, whether you're on a 27-inch iMac, a 13-inch MacBook, whether you're on a phone, it is the only thing on the screen. It's all you can see, this looping video. There are very little to no design elements to what you see on the screen. There's a little logo, a little bit of text, and a button. There's very little to read, and they know it's like, well, we could try and design something that we think people subconsciously are going to like when we land here, or we can show them real people in a real place. There's no design element to that, right? It's just like, it's humanity. And so as soon as I land on that site, I'm connecting with the people. I don't know them, but I see them. I'm connecting with them on the screen. And subconsciously, I'm not making a conscious decision to evaluate how I feel or what I think about this site, but subconsciously, I'm seeing people who look like me, who look like my friends, who look like my church. And I know what they're about. And it encourages me to start scrolling. It encourages me to start engaging, to dig a little deeper and to see what content I'm going to find on this site. But my first impression is solidified by that video that I see when I land there.
And once you do start scrolling, what you'll see is below the fold, a card-based framework for the remainder of the website.
What do you mean by that? Cards.
So basically, if you imagine rectangular or square-sized elements on a website that dynamically can scale with the screen size you're viewing and can be stacked vertically or horizontally.
Right.
So trying to think of a off-the-cuff analogy for what this could look like, but just maybe imagine playing cards.
Yeah.
And you could take playing cards and you could put them horizontally next to each other on their sides. You could stand them up and put them vertically. You could stack them vertically. And what's amazing about this card-based framework, which very much reminded me of the Nucleus framework. We built our entire church website builder, nucleus.church, on this cards framework for a number of reasons. Number one, it scales very nicely on all sizes of devices. So at the office, I'm looking at northpoint.org on a 27-inch iMac. At home, I've got a 13-inch MacBook. And then in my pocket, I've got my iPhone XS Max plus 3X integer.
11 Pro Max, yes.
That's the one. And what's amazing is that on each of these devices, the website looks great. The user interface is very friendly. And that's largely in part, I would say, to the card-based framework, because on my 27-inch MacBook, or pardon me, 27-inch iMac, let's say there are 3 cards right next to each other, all within a single row. And then on that 27-inch, there's a considerable amount of margin on either side of white space. And then on my 13-inch MacBook, the 3 cards are still there horizontally in a single row, but the white space and the margin is much lesser. And then when I get on my iPhone, no longer are there 3 cards in a row right back to back. Now there's one on top of the other. And that's what's great about InDesign, this cards-based approach, is that it's incredibly flexible and you can stack them, rows of 3, rows of 4, rows of 1, and you can use the different cards and their sizes to then emphasize the importance of cards. And so I talked about this with Dave. What he loves about the card-based approach is that it's flexible, not just with design, but with what you're trying to communicate as a church. So what's really cool about the Northpoint website is that Northpoint has a number of different campuses. They've got the Buckhead campus, they've got Gwinnett, they've got another 3, 4, or 5 of them.
Handful,
Their approach to multi-site is different than others. Maybe you've heard multi-site described this way: one church, multiple locations. Northpoint's description or vision for their multi-site approach is multiple churches, one vision. If you go to gwinnettchurch.org, I hope that's the URL, or any of these other URLs, you can find the locations in the footer of northpoint.org. They use the identical quote-unquote theme, but all the visual imagery is different.
The church names are different. They're not Northpoint Church.
Exactly.
They're Gwinnett Church.
And even the main headlines will be different because, Gwinnett has this amazing slogan and narrative around their church, which is, we are for Gwinnett. And so it didn't make sense for them to use the Northpoint headline. They wanted to use their headline. But they're using the same framework. And if you go and you scroll below that above the fold section on the campus websites or on the other church websites that use the same theme, you can see they've arranged their cards differently. differently. And sometimes the card that they put first, which is maybe one card length, full width of the column, not 3 1 by 1 by 1. Like, oh, this is what we're really promoting. And let's say it's groups. But then maybe as you get closer to Easter, you move the groups one down into the row of 3, and you move the Easter services one up into the row of 1. And this versatility of a cards-based approach now, not only is it scaling dynamically with the size of device you're using, it's also scaling dynamically with the seasons of church.
Yeah, so good. As we're talking about this, I'm thinking about the countless Squarespace sites I've built. And Squarespace is awesome. I have multiple sites of my own that are built with Squarespace. I love Squarespace. But how many times have we designed a website with Squarespace? Or this happened to me with Wix years ago too, where it's like, I make a great desktop site. I'm like, I think I'm done. And then I go to it on mobile. I'm like, where did my website go? Because like a lot of the design elements that I implemented into the desktop site, the website builder's like, yeah, that's not going to work on mobile. So like, we just got rid of it. It's like, no, I want it there too.
Oh yeah, that's classic.
It's like, it's just gone.
You like select, it's like, don't show on mobile. It's like,
yes, because we literally can't. We don't have a way to. But
you'd love to show it.
Cards are just a rectangle or a square. It's basically like a big button, usually displayed as an image, that you can scale in size or in orientation any way you want to fit whatever device you're on, which is awesome because you know that in any way, and we know that most web traffic for your church's website is going to be on mobile. But you also want your site to look great on desktop too. But we know that with cards, it's going to display and operate and function the exact same way on any device. And that's like a weight off of a web builder. It's like, I don't have to worry about this. I know that my content is going to look good in any case.
We talked about having a website that's dynamic, that's versatile, that is a living organism, that isn't just this static page. What's amazing about cards is that you can have this framework that's in stone, but then you can move the pieces around. It's almost like this chessboard. Okay, which analogy do you want to go with here?
Whatever one.
It's like chess-tris. It's like whatever.
It's like a board game.
The board remains the same, but you can move the pieces around based on whatever it needs to be done in that moment. And sometimes the pawn needs to go here, and sometimes the little horsey needs to go where the pawn is, because that's what that chess piece is called.
I can't play the chess analogy because I'm admitting this to a lot of people on the internet right now. I don't know how to play chess.
Tough look for our guy.
I know. I can play Tetris,
Mr. Versatility himself.
Yeah.
Wow. An avenue. I was half expecting you to be like, look, former Niagara State champ. No big deal.
No, I grew up playing backgammon.
Okay, boomer.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
Couple other things to note about the infrastructure of this website. It's custom built on Rails, so it's not a WordPress theme or anything like that. And it does integrate directly with the Rock RMS, which is the CHMS platform that NorthPoint uses. The web team at NorthPoint, they have a central web team that works with all of their different quote-unquote campuses.
Okay.
So if you do need a change, because it's not a WordPress theme that you could go in and like tweak yourself, you do have to make a request to the team that does all of the central NorthPoint things. Now, some campuses do have someone who is especially skilled in web thingies.
Yeah.
So some campuses have a bit more leeway than others, but practically that's how all of the changes are made.
Yeah, and that's the framework that they're working within because they're such a large organization and they have those kinds of resources. But this is not a Nucleus promo, but as a pastor of a small church of 100 people who doesn't have those kinds of resources, that's why we made Nucleus the way we did, is because we think that this framework should be feasible and achievable for anybody of any church of any size. You should be able to create a website in 2020. You should be able to create a website that can be an active tool in ministry for you. And that's exactly what northpoint.org is. And it's what we think your website can be too.
And going forward, I fully believe and stand behind this cards-based approach to web design because it scales, it works on all devices, and it works with the dynamic changes of your church. We don't want our church websites to be these static brochures that never change or are difficult to change. Having this cards-based approach is dynamic. It works so well with the living organism central hub approach to church websites that we think is the future and is the present currently. And the design around them is amazing because you can design a card in so many different ways. The framework can stay the same, but you can populate it with your own imagery and put a big focus and emphasis on that. And that gets us into the next part of the website. We talked about the structure, about the framework. The next thing that you need to do to use another analogy, if the structure...
Not a board game one.
No.
Okay.
The structure and framework of your website is much like, building a house. Let's say the walls are just plain painted white. The fundamentals of the house really sturdily constructed. The next part is, you get to design all the furniture and paint the walls whatever color you want. And the biggest thing that you can do here is rely on emotional imagery.
Yeah.
In a study of first impressions on travel websites, the research found that inspiration-related elements had the greatest impact on how first impressions were made. In Etsy's customer research, shoppers have told them that product photos are the most important factor in deciding to buy.
The most important factor.
More important than the shipping cost, more important than customer reviews, more important than the price.
That's incredible.
Researchers from the University of Bradford found that initial trust was boosted on websites that have photos of human faces. University College London found that adding happy photos of people to websites with low trust increased perceived trustworthiness. You can just add smiling photos to sketchy sites and people are fooled. That's how powerful this is. Canadian researchers found that websites with photos of human faces were more positively received by users than websites with photos lacking human faces or websites lacking photos of humans at all. The point we're trying to make here,
if it's not already abundantly clear,
the most important thing that you can do for your church website design is not colors, not fonts. It's emotional imagery of real people at your church smiling. You can make it a video. You can make it a photo. When you land on northpoint.org, currently the first clip in their looping video above the fold that is full screen and has almost nothing deterring it from view is about a dozen people walking into the front entrance of North Point, and the amount of sun in that screen, the amount of lens flares.
Living their best
It's
life.
like, what's the ideal summer morning of walking into church? It's like, this is what it looks like. That is such an emotional picture. It gives you this feeling of warmth, not just with the people and the gathering of the community, but also with the weather and the way that the frame is put together. It's all done very purposefully. And then you go through every single image or video on the homepage of northpoint.org is people-focused. 9 total photos, again, 13 video slides in that looping background at the top of the website. And every single one, there's someone with their face and they're smiling, they're playing with kids, there's a group of teenagers that are gathered together. That's all done very purposefully. And it gets next into the messaging of the website. The main headline on the site that I've purposely withheld until now, of course, we've showed it a million times in the B-roll, is we make faith practical. And if you scroll down from there, it says, life doesn't come with instructions. We've been helping people navigate the complexity of relationships, parenting, finances, and faith for over 24 years. We know that you want to get it right. We believe you can. We want to help. Now, I also encourage you to explore the other websites within the North Point system because other campuses use different messaging that's more unique to their campus, which I think is very cool. You scroll below that initial main headline and secondary headline, you get to the first card-based row that says, find your people. And there are 4 different cards, just grad or early 20s, single, married, parents. And then below that, another row of cards that says we make faith practical for every season of life. We've got infants to preschool, elementary, middle school, high school. And then the 2 main buttons at the top of the page, one that's a primary big orange button, another one that has no color behind it. It's the secondary call to action, not as emphasized. The big orange button says plan a visit. The other one just says just show up. So I asked Dave, okay, where did this we make faith practical idea come from? And a few of the things that he said that stood out to me is that with North Point, and this comes directly top down from Andy Stanley, is that every single word gets scrutinized. They understand the power of messaging and the words that they use, and they want to make sure that they choose their words carefully. And it's obvious that we make faith practical. It didn't come out of nowhere. And it comes from this idea that, for better or for worse, church attendance is declining. We've talked about this at great length. And one of the main reasons for that is young people. Millennials, Gen Z attending church at historically low rates. The main reason is because they don't see a need for it. They can do the things that church does elsewhere They can find those things elsewhere. We don't need to go to church to learn about God. And so North Point has recognized this, and you can see it in their messaging. They talk about the intersections of faith and culture that every human can resonate with. Parenting, finances, relationships, purpose. This is, for a lack of better terms, sales 101. If you have a product that you want people to have, that product being our relationship with Jesus here, if the prospective buyer does not know that they need the product, you need to first find a pain point that they have, make them aware of that pain point, and then talk about how what you're offering can be a solution to that pain point. No one is out there looking for a place to learn about God in a physical setting. I have a phone if I wanted to do that. I don't need to wait to Sunday to do that. But all of us universally want to be better parents. We want to be better with our finances. We want to be better with our relationships because we are now feeling more isolated than ever thanks to, again, these phones. And so North Point is articulating those felt needs. They're not coming right in and saying Jesus is the solution. They're saying, look, we at North Point have been dealing with these things for a quarter century, and we can help you with them. And then eventually, down the road, they're going to talk about the reason that we believe all of these things and the way that we're solving these problems, they're all being formed by the life of Jesus. And I believe it was Andy Stanley who originally articulated the best way that I know to talk about faith, which is, number one, I believe that I've been put on this earth to make a difference. Number two, I believe the best way to make a difference is through love. And number three, the best version of love that I could ever explain or point you to is Jesus Christ. And he talks about that in his book, Irresistible. And if you know the book, Irresistible, it talks about this non-linear journey to faith. And in the past, we've gone up to people and we've been like, hey, here's a tract. You're going to go to hell. Could you not? If you want, I could pray for you right now.
Step one.
The sinner's prayer. You create this moment and you get someone to say, I believe in Jesus. I choose him as my savior. Boom, into heaven. We're done.
We're done.
Move on.
And
what we're seeing now is a more holistic approach to faith, recognizing that a relationship with Jesus and coming to Jesus and even walking out your faith, it's not linear. And the Bible articulates this when it talks about working through your salvation on your knees in fear and trembling. And that idea that like this is a process. And to approach church and thus our web design and our messaging, both public and private, behind the scenes, in the sanctuary and everywhere, to approach it in this idea of a light switch that goes on and off, saved or not, lost or found, broken or whole, is in a way, in a very important way, I would say, disingenuous to our understanding of the gospel, that it is a process and it's something that isn't found necessarily linearly. And what's great about that is it gives us the freedom to approach things in a much different way.
And in previous podcast episodes, we've talked about great examples of church headlines. In a more recent one, we've talked about great examples of church slogans. And here are two great examples of a great headline and a great, albeit a little bit long, a great slogan that addresses who North Point is or who each of their different local churches are and why they exist. And so this is getting addressed after we've made, as a website visitor, after we've made those subconscious, evaluations of how I feel about what I see. What's happening next is I'm going to start engaging with the content and making conscious evaluations of what I say about, or what I believe about what these people are saying. And North Point, specifically on this site, northpoint.org, has done a great job with their headline. We make faith practical. And then their slogan of addressing me as a person who has a shared humanity with people at North Point that I don't know. But they lay it out and say, hey, like, life is hard. It's kind of messy. There are these different facets that maybe some of them you don't resonate with. Maybe some of them you do. And that's why we're here and how we're trying to serve you. And so I think on this website, they do a great job of addressing me in that way so that I know, like you said, they kind of make me aware of a need that I have. And you use like some marketing language, and I know I've had conversations with people who in the context of church are put off by that, but like, isn't that how Jesus handled—
It's just storytelling. You want to call it whatever you
exactly.
want.
Like Jesus handled most of his interactions that way. He met someone at a well or at a party or at a dinner table or whatever, chatted with them, talked about a perceived need. What do you need? You need to be set free. You need to be healed. You need to see. You need this and that. And then he, of course, showed them that he is the answer. But he very frequently started with addressing whatever need they had to show that, right, you have a need and I am the answer. And so that's all we're trying to do as churches as well. But we need to start doing that on our church websites, because our church websites are becoming our virtual front door. We're going to have a lot more interactions online with people, a lot more first impressions online with people than we'll ever have at our buildings anymore. So we need to be greeting them in the same way online.
And I'm the one that's putting in that sales business language because I run a business for a living. At its core, it's just meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
That's what relevance is all about. You know, relevant being that way, it doesn't necessarily mean how you dress and the cool lights. It's like, are we able to meet people where they are? And what's amazing about the story of Jesus and redemption and reconciliation and hope for a better future and laying down your life for your brothers and sisters and your friends and your enemies is that it has stood the test of multiple millenniums.
Yeah.
And you will see different elements of the story emphasized in different generations. And what we're seeing right here is a direct response to some of the things that we know about those that are 40 and under. We care so much about cause-based movements. We want to be a part of something great.
Sure.
And when it's abstract, when it's an ideology that doesn't seem accessible, we struggle with that. Well, what is their exact messaging? Make faith practical.
Yes.
This story and life of Jesus should inform your everyday living. It's not just about the future and eternity. It's about here and now, right in this moment. And that resonates. That meets people where they are and makes Jesus more accessible to them. Another thing that I thought was really interesting behind the scenes is that Dave said when they're working through this messaging, what they would often do is Andy would, in his hosting spots, not in his messages, but in his hosting spots at church, try out some of these quote unquote headlines in the congregation.
That's smart.
And see how it resonates. And we do this all the time. I'll put out a tweet like I did yesterday about, hey, North Point has a cool new website, and I'll see how the post does. People lost their mind over that tweet. We said, let's elevate that and make it a full-length episode because people are showing that they are resonating with this.
Yes.
And so you can try out this messaging in person in your hosting segments and see how people in your church respond. I thought that was really cool.
Well, it's a great way to make these decisions kind of as a community because we know, like, you know, maybe Andy's coming up with these headlines or these slogans, but if he just comes up with them on his own, he's like, okay, I came up with this is good, it goes on the website, maybe it doesn't resonate with the community. And I've worked through this in my own church as well, like coming up with some of these taglines or slogans and working them out on stage. It's like, oh, that didn't resonate with people. And so even though I thought it was a good idea,
That's a great
I'm
point.
going to default to, like, you know, the other 99% of the people who are here is like, that's not quite us. And so we try again. But it's a great way to make decisions kind of in a communal sense. And by doing it this way, in Andy's context of a gigantic church, he's still able to do it in the context of presumably thousands of people.
I love the messaging for plan a visit as the main call to action, and the secondary call to action is just show up.
Yeah.
Because that is also identifying there are some people that want to plan a visit, get the VIP treatment, and see everything the church has to offer, and for them to feel like we are the center of attention.
Right.
I don't know who's like that. Who wants to be the center of attention? Not I. And then there are others
I'll be clicking that just show up.
Just show
like,
up. Want to low key check things out, and they don't want anyone to
don't even want you to know that
acknowledge
I'm
them.
here.
They want to like come out, and just like I don't want anyone to know that this is here. Low key, I'm just checking this out. North Point is acknowledging and recognizing that some people want that VIP treatment, others low key want to experience it for themselves, and they're saying we can accommodate both of those things. That's important. They've recognized that maybe in the church we've had a little bit too much of a default to, are you new here? Please, can you stand up, wave, and read out your SIN number? Because we'd love to get to know you.
We're going
to
lay hands on you after that. We're going to put a gift in your hands, and we'd like to see you in a room we call the newbie room after the service. We're not going to tell you what goes on in there. You're going to wait and find out until after the service. Thank you.
A round of applause for this church.
We'll take
Clap
your children
for this person.
now. Yeah.
No one has ever felt more awkward in their lives.
Yeah.
And this
Is it your birthday? Can we sing to you?
Is it your birthday?
Can we sing to you?
Finally, when it comes to the design of your website, what North Point does an excellent job of is making sure the visuals are congruent with the messaging. So if you go to the Gwinnett Church website, the first frame right now in their video is an aerial shot of their campus.
Okay.
And that matches perfectly with their headline for Gwinnett.
Right.
Their entire messaging is, we are for this region. So what better way to embody that than to show an aerial landscape sprawling shot of our region?
Yeah, and we're in the region.
Dave said that they tried something similar on a different website with the main headline, "Life doesn't need to be complicated." They're like, all you could see was this giant parking lot.
Right.
It was completely antithesis to the messaging.
Right.
There was incongruity. It didn't make sense to say, life is complicated, we're simple. Also, this parking lot has like 10,000 cars in it. Good luck.
Yeah.
That didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, parking's going to be super not complicated.
They want to make sure their visuals are congruent with the messaging.
Yeah.
And we, as filmmakers, which we are not, but we're like discount videographers.
Right.
One of the things I'll always say to our team is make sure that the message that I'm saying in this script is congruent with whatever B-roll or visual you're showing.
Yeah.
And we have not seen this movie yet, but I am almost confident, certainly, that I can speak for it authoritatively as it being the best movie of 2019. 1917 is shot in such a way where the visuals match the script in ways that most movies cannot reach toward. At first, I thought it was a gimmick. If you don't know, 1917, which almost certainly will be nominated for Best Picture, although at this time of the recording, nominations are not out for the Oscars.
Right.
It did win the Golden Globe, for what it's worth. Is 7 to 8 continuous shots strung together in a way that you would never know there were 7 to 8 shots. It's a war movie where the camera never leaves the subject matter.
Right.
The camera will never pan, you'll never see a cut. And at first I was like, oh, it's just Birdman again. Like, oh, cool. We had someone on a Steadicam for 2 hours. It's very cool. I'm sure it was very complex to make.
Right.
And I've now changed my opinion on this and realized I was wrong, hearing some of the people push back and say, no, if you were in this situation, in war, it would be a claustrophobic, never-ending, no reprieve, no sleep, no relief situation. We want to match that feeling, which is in the script, with the feeling on the camera.
Yeah.
The visuals need to be congruent with the messaging. So just as these characters would never have had any relief or reprieve from their mission, you, the viewer, need to feel how intense that is.
Yeah.
The unrelenting fear and purpose and the clock is ticking and claustrophobic nature. We're going to match the visuals with the messaging. You need to do that on your website as well.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, we are, come and experience new life with us, and then you have a picture of like your exterior building, it's like you're talking about people, but the visuals are showing a building.
Yeah.
That doesn't match.
Yeah, and that's an example of using images that you shot in-house that don't match. But this is why it's imperative to not ever use stock imagery of people on your church's website. You and I both do a lot of research on restaurants before we go and reading reviews and looking at websites. And if I was to go to a website and see stock photos of food and go to that restaurant and not get that food that I saw on the website, I would feel like betrayed. Like,
ooh, we found those fish tacos on Shutterstock.
yeah, it's like these are not the fish tacos that I saw online. So the same thing with your church website. And we have almost all done it. When you have a vision for a page, you want there to be this header of like a multicultural group of people. So it's like, I don't have a picture of that for my church, so I'm going to Unsplash. But it's like, no, that's disingenuous. And so we have to make...
It's just lying.
Yeah.
It's beyond disingenuous. It is a lie.
Yeah, and you have to be true and honest about who you are. Like if you are an older Presbyterian church who's trying to reach young people in your community, don't pretend online that you are some non-denominational church with fog and lights. Like that's to attract people. That's not who you are. Be honest, be true to who you are, and be honest so that when people see you online and hopefully come and visit you in person, it's congruent, right? You used that word earlier, like that it's what I see online portrayed and what I see in real life is congruent. It's imperative that we're honest with ourselves and honest with the way we're portraying ourselves online.
Don't be the church version of a Tinder profile. It says you're 6'2", and then you meet me. And it's like, you're not 6'2", little guy.
Yeah.
One final thing I wanted to point out, I asked Dave, okay, what's your favorite part of this website that most people may not recognize, flies under the radar? And then Dave articulated something that had really stood out to me, and I think that's just because of me and Dave are very much on the same terms with a lot of things. He said he loved on the homepage the call-outs for social media. So we've talked about this card-based approach. On the third row of cards on most of the websites across North Point that use this framework, you will see 4 massive cards, each dedicated to a unique social platform. Bright color, you cannot miss them.
They're almost comically large.
There's a Facebook, there's a Twitter, there's a YouTube, there's an Instagram.
LinkedIn.
They're so bright. And what Dave was saying, he's like, This represents our value on social media. We want to connect with you on our own platform, but we also want to connect with you on platforms where you're already spending time.
Yeah.
He's like, our old website showed our value on social media as it was 5 years ago. Tucked away in the footer.
Yeah.
All of the logos are monochromatic. They don't stand out, and they're about the size of a penny if you shrunk it by 10.
Yeah.
That showed our value. It was this thing, an afterthought. We didn't care too much about it. Now, we value social media in a huge way, and we're representing that with our design.
Yeah. And if you're going to be courageous enough to do that on your own site, if you're redesigning your own site, make sure that you are already showing up on social. You know, like don't emphasize, don't emphasize your social channels, and then when people click on them, they find that you haven't posted in 4 weeks. Like, you have to make sure that you're present there and actively using those channels before you decide to say that, like, this is a value. We have high value on these channels, and so we're going to tell you that on our website.
Check out northpoint.org.
Yeah.
Let us know your thoughts on it. We think it's one of the best examples of what a church website can and should be in 2020 and beyond. We don't think that it's necessarily reinventing the wheel.
No.
I saw one person tweeted back and were like, this website's boring. And I was like,
Isn't that the best part?
yeah, like, I don't know if you necessarily, as a church, need to be creating a website that's going to win an award.
Yeah.
What you need to do is communicate clearly and emotionally, with the use of imagery, what you're all about.
Yeah.
State that, resonate with the people that will resonate with you, and move on from the ones that won't.
Mm-hmm.
And we also love this website because we think that this style of website is attainable for every church.
Yes.
We don't want to set this up as like, look, you're probably not going to be able to build this by yourself on Rails and integrate it directly with the use of code into your CHMS
Sure.
that is built on an open source, flexible framework. It's probably not possible. But this idea of a website that is dynamic and a living organism, a central hub website that's based on a cards framework, can be accessible for every single church, and that's how we built Nucleus.
Yeah.
And we built Nucleus 3 years ago when we looked at church websites, and we're like, so much of them are just these brochure-style, static websites. They haven't been updated in forever.
Yeah.
If you're coming here as a new visitor, you're not being met with any information that's relevant to you. And the people in your congregation aren't using this website because it doesn't have any relevance to them. So who's it even for?
Yeah.
It's not helping anyone.
It's not helping anyone.
And so we think that a central hub website that gives a clear plan of action for potential new visitors, like northpoint.org does, but is also relevant to the people in your congregation, using that cards-based framework is the way forward. And then with the Nucleus framework, we give you so many big containers, empty, where you can inject your emotional visual imagery into there. Take beautiful photos and inject them into your website to make that first impression that's happening in a matter of seconds. It's not going to be done with the text. It's going to be done subconsciously with the framework of the website and then with that emotional visual imagery that we're all connecting with. If I land on a website and I see a picture of your church building, cool. If I land on your website and see a smiling photo of your pastor and a bunch of the people in the church, that really can make an emotional difference.
Yeah, and it serves to build trust. So whether it's with a first-time visitor or someone in your congregation, this philosophy serves to build trust so that once that trust has been established and I'm scrolling through your site and I'm really interested in what you have to say to me, when I click through one of those cards, it's leading me to a next step. A next step to take in my life with Jesus. So all those cards you're going to see on northpoint.org, they lead to a next step, whether it's joining a ministry, joining a small group, whether it's plan your visit, this is for first-time visitors, whether it's a prayer form, whatever it is, they're all leading towards a next step, which is me actively taking forward progressive steps in my life with Jesus, which is what we think, frankly, life is all about. And if your website can serve your church as an active tool in ministry to help facilitate next steps, I mean, that's what it's all about.
If it's been 3 or 4 years and you're like, man, we've been needing a new website, what time better than now? You can head to nucleus.church, www.nucleus.church to check it out. We've got a 30-day free trial, no credit card required. You can just put in your email and start experimenting with the website builder. We have these pre-made card templates that will automatically pre-populate with sections and even copy where we think that your website pages should be aligned. And, maybe you don't know exactly what should go for. Well, I built all these templates. This is what I would do if I was building your church's website. So nucleus.church is the place to find that. And with that being said, we'll be back with Top 5 in just a moment. I am in charge of top 5 this week. And post-holidays, post-Pro Church Tools Company retreat, a lot of us have been on airplanes. A lot of us have been flying. Maybe you're in colder temps. You got to get somewhere warmer. You're jumping on a plane, headed to the Dominican, to Mexico, wherever you might be going. It's a proper time for us to revisit the top 5 rules for airplane/airport etiquette.
Okay.
The problem with air travel, Alex,
there's a lot of problems with it.
Most people don't do it very often.
Right. Yeah.
And this friction comes generally when people that are in the rhythms of air travel are confronted by those who do it maybe once a year, once every few years, and don't understand that there are certain unwritten or straight up, obviously
literally written
in
rules.
stone, 10 Commandments, tablets, here's Moses handing them to you style rules. We got to understand them. Top 5 in reverse chronological order. Number 5. This is before you even get on the plane. Be prepared for the security conveyor belt. So you're walking, you've checked your bags if you have any, you've got your ticket in hand or on your phone, and you got to get through security.
And you're standing in a line. Like, you have time.
Look, I will acknowledge that when you're at an airport, it can be difficult because every airport is run with different rules.
That's a thing in and of itself, which may be a whole podcast episode dedicated to this very thing.
Some airports are really good. They have a person who's like, take out your gels! Sebastian style. Your laptops, your liquids, your gels! Take out your gels!
And then other ones are like, yeah, you want to bring on that bottle of water? Like, go ahead, no problem. Everything's
good. And then some
Everything's
have
great
the
here.
poster that has like clear instructions. You will need to take off your belt. You will need to take off your shoes. You will need to remove your laptop from your carry-on.
Yeah, so then you get on your connecting flight and you start taking off your belt and everyone's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Why are you
This isn't a strip club, you sicko. Keep it on.
Why are you taking off your belt here,
like,
son?
Well, I took it off with the other one. Where were you? What? Oh, you were at O'Hare.
Yeah.
They do things a little bit differently over there, son. It's like, well, why didn't you have a sign? Well, I'm here yelling it. You're not saying anything. I will acknowledge. Difficult.
Yes.
But the nice thing about security lines is also the worst thing, is that there's a lot of people in front of you.
You got time.
You can see what people are doing. And this basically, we all make mistakes in security from time to time. Oh, I forgot that was in the thing. They got to bring it over. The person's got to sort through. Man, why do you have a 40 of tequila in here?
Yeah. I forgot.
I thought it was duty free. I forgot. You know what I'm saying? When you get up and it is your turn to put your items in the bins, to remove your laptop, which is a universal thing.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah, exactly. Except for when it's not.
What you don't want to do is become the person who is slowing everyone up. Everyone is trying to make their flight in a timely manner. And then you're there, you got 7 different bins. You're putting like one bracelet in each individual bin. You don't know what's happening. The person is like, no, you got to put the bin through. You're walking away. You're not staying with your bin making sure it gets into the conveyor belt x-ray portion before you start walking through the scanner. Stay with your bins, people.
Yeah, that's like, it's the grandfather who walks away from his bin. He's about to go through security. This person's like, hey, whose bag is this? He's like, it's mine. So he goes back, he fixes up his thing, so he's causing a commotion back here. Then he goes, it's time to walk through the metal detector. He left his bracelet on or whatever. He's got his AirPods in his pocket or something. And they're like, sir, you have to go back. And he's like, he's got no shoes on. He looks lost. They're like, here, just use this little bin. So he puts it in the little bin. But now what's happening on the other side is his bags have already gone through because it's spent so much time and it's clogging up business on the other side.
And right now, I want to call out my age group because y'all are the worst.
You think so?
Oh, yeah. The amount of people that are our age, here's an idea. When you get up to the security, have your identification documents ready.
Turn your brightness up.
Turn your darn brightness 100% up. It's right there. Apple had to invent a firmware patch that when they open up your Apple Wallet, it automatically does it because we were so useless.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. Have your ticket ready to be scanned.
Yeah.
There are things that we Okay, we're on roll 5. We need to keep going.
Some practical steps. When you're in the line, get off Twitter, get off Instagram, definitely get off TikTok, and get prepared.
Always have your ticket and identification documents ready. Passport open to the photo page.
Yeah, drink your water bottle, make sure it's empty, get your laptop out, put it under your arm.
Yeah,
practical things.
always have my laptop out before I get up to the bins. Stay with your bin. Stay with your bin.
We haven't even got to the airplane yet.
Number 4.
You're just trying to get through security at this point.
You're on the airplane.
Okay.
The plane lands. We made it. Everyone stands up right away. I'm not going to argue with like the second the plane lands, row 75 is standing up.
Right.
You maybe want to stretch your legs, fine, whatever. And there's that one person starts making their way down the aisle. We're not even getting off the plane yet, and they're pushing their way, making their way through the aisle. One time this is okay. You have a connecting flight
you're in
that
Atlanta.
you're not going to make.
You're in Atlanta. You're missing a Delta connection. I've been there more times than I can count. I get it. And to be that person,
You just stop by North Point.
Yeah, it's true. But to be that person, it actually sucks.
Of course.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. They're not usually that person.
No.
They're just like, oh, if I get 4 rows ahead, I'm really going to save time. Here's the problem with when you get up and you try to make it to the front. We're all getting off at the same time. And what's going to happen is someone is going to get out and stand in the aisle and start removing their bin from the overheads, which is what they should be doing. I have never seen anyone without saying, I'm a connecting flight, please move, and people understand. I've never seen anyone move forward 4 to 6 rows beyond that.
No.
You get 4 to 6 rows, and then everyone that you've stepped over awkwardly and like pushed past, you're still with them.
Yeah.
And we're all looking at you.
We're all going to end up at customs at the same time. We're all going to be at the baggage carousel at the same time. You're not getting anywhere quicker. And there is, even if you're not the type of person to get up and go ahead, there is a process to who gets out of their chair when.
Okay, well, we'll get to that.
Okay.
That is number 2.
Okay.
Before that, number 3. Not staying seated when the plane is ready to leave. We're purposely avoiding the seat, raise back, raise up.
Sure, it's low-hanging
Keep
fruit.
your shoes on,
Yeah.
keep your socks on. Like, it's just obvious. Like, don't recline your seat in economy. Then the person behind you just needs to recline their seat. And the person behind you, you're just at where you were at the beginning. You didn't gain anything.
Right.
Keep your shoes on, for goodness sakes. If you take your socks off, what are you doing?
Okay.
Obvious, okay? Just a given. Not staying seated when the plane is ready to leave. It is hard to board a plane. We got to get on time to have an on-time departure, Alex.
Yeah.
There's not enough overhead space.
Never.
You're walking up and down. You're trying to find that last place for your bag.
Yeah.
Tough. And then what happens is everyone's seated. And then there's that one person that's like, oh, I forgot my headphones in my bag. Or I just want to rearrange my clothes now. They're not even forgetting things. They're always just like standing up, opening the overhead bins,
they're just
unzipping.
tinkering.
We're in taxi, sir. Everyone is seated.
Yeah.
Do you not see what's happening around you? And then the poor steward or stewardess, flight attendant, pardon me, gets on the intercom like, would everyone please take their seats?
Yes, exactly.
We are going to be departing soon.
Yeah.
And then they do nothing. They don't respond.
No.
Will everyone please take their seats?
Exactly.
They're trying to do that passive aggressive thing where we're not calling anyone out in particular, just in general.
But sir, you're
You can
literally
sit
the
down.
only one
And then
standing.
eventually they're like, sir! I love when flight attendants eventually snap. The first couple of times they're like, you know, it'd be great if we were all seated because we want to have an on-flight departure. Second or third time, it's like, guy in the black blazer with the receding hairline, the widow's peak, get your butt in row 32A.
We will land this plane. We will land this plane.
I will put you in airplane prison if I have to.
This does happen also when we're boarding. When boarding isn't quite complete, but let's say you're in zone 1 or zone 2. So you're in your seat. Other people are boarding. And you forgot something. Again, you forgot your headphones. So you get up while people are boarding, which then stops the whole boarding process. This goes back to number 5. There's a little bit of work that you have to do to be prepared before you put your bum in your seat. If you need 2 pairs of headphones, make sure you have them. If you don't want your jacket, if you want to put your jacket with your coat, make sure you do it before you sit down. Get yourself sorted. A little bit of forethought, right?
Yeah.
You have to do a little bit of work.
That's what I'm saying. If you're in the rhythm of flying, you learn this.
This is what I do. This is my process.
And you know how crazy I am about this.
Sure.
I don't really care where we're going. All I care about is how efficiently I can get from my house to my destination and then brag to you all about my amazing air flying skills.
And people who are flying like once every 2 years, they're just trying to make it to their
They're
destination.
literally just trying to arrive alive.
Yes.
And I'm like, we beat our best time by 40 seconds. High fives all around.
Yeah.
Let's hit up In and Out as a celebration.
Yes.
Rule number 2, when you're exiting the plane, obviously, don't be the person that's pushing forward. You won't gain anything and you'll embarrass yourself. But also, exit the plane with zipper merging procedure.
And this one's more common than anything we've talked about so far.
This
happens every time.
It boggles my face off. My face is boggled. You stand up. You're in row 10.
Yep.
What happens unless someone is purposefully seated with a child or they're waiting.
Sure.
And you can tell they're waiting because they're seated and they're smiling at you because they don't hate you.
You give them a little look. It's like, hey, you need to go. They're like, no, I'm fine.
You will wait for the row in front of you to exit before you begin exiting.
Yes.
And you know what? Sometimes it's unfortunate because the person ahead of you, they were in one of the window seats, so they're just coming out and they haven't yet gathered their baggage.
That's okay.
They've got to open the overhead bin. They're pulling it out. I'm always trying to be as expedient as possible when that is my role.
Yeah.
If you are in row 10 and row 9 has not yet exited, and clearly they are trying to, you don't go ahead of them. I don't care if you have your bag in hand already. I don't care if you were the aisle and they were the window. Zipper merging procedure. The fastest way for us all to get off the aircraft is for one row to go and then the next row to go and then the next row to go. If you start trying to get up in front of 4 people, again, you're saving fractions of seconds and ruining your reputation, and everyone is now upset with you.
Yeah, I'd rather not talk about this one a lot personally because I'm a Christian, so just do it.
Growing up, my mom called me rule boy. If you ever do these things in public, I'll probably tell you. I feel it's not fair. I have appointed myself as the person to enforce these rules, but I'll just look at you and be like, zipper merging procedure, sir. And you'll be like, what the heck? What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? I'll be like, did you not see the top 5?
Yeah.
Rule number 1.
You and I fly a lot more than most people that we work with, and we just went on a trip with all the people that we work with, and there's like this like unspoken patience that we have to exercise, or it's like, we know these people, we love these people, it's okay. Like, we're gonna be okay. And you and I have to exercise that. And
But I don't. Rule number 1.
right, you did fire that one guy.
What did he do? He did this. Number 1, he blocked the boarding lane in a zone that had not yet been called. Okay, so because we fly a lot, we have a lot of miles.
Sure.
We book our miles. We're either in zone 1 or 2 in a 5 to 6 zone sequence. There are always 2 lanes right next to each other, coinciding. On the one hand, you have zone 1 and 2. On the other, you have zones 3 through 6. Zone 1 through 2 is my lane. I am in that lane. And what happens is, before lane 6 is even called, all these people are huddling right in front of my lane. And the problem is that I'm a polite Canadian. And I don't know why I continue to do this. I'm starting to not. But I always just assume, oh, you're in here. You're in zone 1 or 2.
Right, yeah.
And then eventually you'll hear someone be like, yo, what zone are you in? Like, I'm in zone 4. What are you doing here? The worst is what I'm waiting for you because I'm trying to be polite. And I missed zone 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Why do we have zone 1 and 2? So we can get on the plane first to get the premium overhead bins. But you were standing in the wrong lane because you cannot read. This is the part where I don't have any sympathy for people that don't fly that often. You got the person, if your zone has not been called, please don't crowd the lane. Sit down. Zone 3 through 7 is lined up like in front of the flight attendant and be like, we're ready. We're ready. We haven't called even people that have children yet. Sit down.
What happens is like the announcement comes over. It's like, so good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Air Canada Flight 0097, service to Phoenix. We're getting ready to board the plane, so just so you know, we're about to start boarding shortly. And then everybody...
Go!
Everybody gets up, and it's like a herd of lambs, and they just and it's like that bottleneck thing, right? There's 2 lanes, but the group of people it's amasses like 10 times the width of those 2 lanes, and they just stand there. And it's not the process, because what has happened to you and I before is we'll go stand in line because they've called zone 1 and 2. So we're standing in line thinking that like the people before us are in line.
Because we just assume the best.
And then they call, okay, now zone 3 and 4. And we're just like, hold on, wait. We've just been standing amongst these lambs that are in zone 7. And we thought we were waiting for them to board zone 1 and 2. And now we're at the back of the zone 7 lambs. And we can't put our bags in the overhead bins? Some people, we get it because of miles, but some people pay for this privilege. They pay money for it. And they lose it because people are just so excited to get in line and think that the plane's going to take off any sooner if they get into their zone.
Look, we know this is complex. There's nuance.
Is it?
There are few things on earth that grieve me more. It's my privilege showing when I don't get on my zone. And God bless her, my wife, your wife. I have a perfectly timed procedure. I know how to get through customs. We travel internationally a lot.
Yeah.
I know how to get no checked bags, Tesla, valet parking, so they plug it in, it's ready to go when we come back. We get to everywhere, zone 1 or 2. And then I hear, I'm just going to go to the bathroom. And I'm like, well, no, they just said they're going to start boarding soon. If you go, we'll miss our zone. Like, no, I'll be back in time.
No, we'll be quick, honey.
We'll be fine.
No, you won't.
13 minutes later, they're on zone 14.
Right, and they leave all their bags with us so that when they're gone,
I can't leave.
And our zone gets called.
I have boarded without my wife multiple times. Like, we are in zone 1 or 2. I will not have my bag checked to the gate.
Right.
It will not happen. I need this premium overhead space. If you're in the bathroom, that's on you. We got a 9-hour flight to Spain upcoming. No. I have timed this and planned it perfectly. Yeah. Air travel, I understand it's complex, and I understand the move. If you're in a zone 3 through 6, you know that overhead bin space is...
Yeah.
It's scarce.
Sure.
So you line up so that when they do call, you're as soon... again, fine. Don't block zone 1 and 2 lane.
Right.
You have your own lane. This isn't hard. Why are you in my lane? I understand you're here. You're going to wait patiently and use zones 3 through 7. I know, look, okay, there's a class system here. It's not great.
Sure.
I don't, look, if there was another way, I'd be open to it. But it's my lane. It's my lane.
Yeah. Did you see the video on Twitter that also made the rounds on broadcast television of a woman in business class, it looked like, with her shoe and sock off, just her bare foot?
No.
And she is just leaning back and she's scrolling through the entertainment system with her bare foot.
I mean, that's respect to the
Did
dexterity.
you see that?
That's rule, like, I mean, that's just like fundamental humanity
That's
rule.
humanity. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with air travel. It's like, just keep your feet down.
Let us know which airplane etiquette rules that we missed, and if we're just being pretentious, frequent travelers that are clearly out of touch with the reality, let us know as well.
Yeah.
That'll do it for this episode of the Pro Church Tools Show. We'll see you next time.